Oh, I have to do
That'll do it.
Okay. Do you want me to just start, or should I introduce myself?
Um, yeah, I mean, I can say you are the esteemed Beth Osnes.
Thank you. It just feels good being introduced by Patrick.
Yeah. An amazing professor in the Department of Theater and Dance at the University of Colorado Boulder, who co-founded the Inside the Greenhouse project that focuses on creative and media climate communication and does several awesome projects to expand the possibilities of how we communicate about climate change and the way that it impacts us as we do so. And with that, I will leave it to you, Beth.
Great, thank you. So, as Patrick said, Beth Osnes, I'm a professor of theater and environmental studies here at the University of Colorado. And Patrick and I sat in my little sunroom on the hill and came up with this name for this talk together: Embodying Fun Climate Activities that Inspire the Processing of Emotions and Constructive Hope. And that's really at the core of what I do, is really bringing the body back into climate negotiations, education, policy making, everything that we start to really understand and bring to the table, that we impact and we enjoy the environment through our bodies, our lived experience, the knowledges that we hold, the senses, the energy that our body has within it should be part of our considering. And if we just say that but don't practice that, it's not really going to work. And what I find that comes with embodiment is fun. When we get back into our bodies and start to be active, oftentimes we experience fun. And we kind of pour all this into climate activities that get designed. There's these, for me, it's usually performance-based activities that get poured into experience designs that young people can engage in. And we're hoping, and I hope that that will really inspire them. I feel like when people have the feelings, and there's research to back this up, that when people experience positive emotions surrounding the issue of climate change, that it really helps them process negative emotions around that issue. And that just helps people deal with things like climate anxiety and grief, but it also helps to feed constructive hope. And constructive hope is that notion that Louise Chawla talks about, where it's hope, but it's really grounded in climate action, so that it has some heft behind it. It's not just like a lightweight feeling. We can throw the word hope around a lot. This one's really grounded. I'm going to share my slides, but I want to share my slides first and just get us onto the PowerPoint that I'll be using to guide me in doing this. And there's my title. I want to start us out with a climate activity that helps us to embody. This is an embodiment activity on energy. So if everybody looks to, can you still all see the participants list if you go to the bottom there to see what number you are? There really aren't that many of us. So I think if everybody just chose an energy form, that would totally work. If everybody just wants to choose one that's their favorite, look at this list. You could choose solar, wind, hydro, coal, oil, gas, biomass, geothermal, nuclear. Everybody just pick one energy form that they want to use for this activity that's going to start us out. Everybody have one?
Um, I'm not seeing the form of energy.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Beth, we're actually seeing your slide
Oh,
notes
yes.
or presenter
Right.
view instead of
Why is it doing this? Okay, wait. Sorry, everybody.
Just go to use slideshow up at the top there.
Slideshow, play from start.
Yeah.
Why
And
is
then use slideshow just above you there.
use slideshow? Okay, thank you, everybody. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, good. Here you go.
Perfect.
The intro, the lists of energy forms.
There we are.
This is an activity that we're going to use, that I use in person, but we adjusted it for Zoom, and we're going to start out with an activity. So everybody pick one energy form Does everybody have an energy form? Solar, wind, hydro, coal, oil, gas, biomass, geothermal, nuclear? Everybody's got one? It'd be kind of nice if people turned on their, if you turned on your,
But you won't be able to see folks as a warning because it's a webinar rather than a Zoom meeting.
But we do have such a small
oh,
group of people. We can promote people to panelists and then we'll be able to see them.
oh, interesting. Oh, because
So,
it is a webinar. Do you want me to just kind of describe this and everybody kind of does it?
well, here, let me promote everybody to panelists and then
Okay.
they'll be able to,
Small group.
should be able to join us here.
Great. Great. Sorry for the trouble here, everybody.
What happened? Oh, we had someone for a second and she left.
Technical difficulties. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody got a
Well,
form of energy. And anybody who feels comfortable showing themselves, go ahead. Otherwise, the three of us can totally demonstrate this activity. And this really puts into action this idea of embodying things. Of course, energy is the most vibrant thing to embody because it's energy, you know? It's all these different forms of energy. So great, everybody's got one. The first thing I'm going to do is invite the people, especially the three of us who are showing right now. I'm going to ask you to do an action that represents a machine that uses the form of energy that you chose. So let's say I chose gas, natural gas. I'm going to do, this is going to be my gesture of a machine that uses the energy that I'm doing. I'm doing a gas stove. I'd like to see if either of my other two that are bravely showing themselves can do an action that represents a machine that uses this form of energy. Alicia, what's coming up for you? Patrick, do you want to just jump in there? If you want to unmute them, we can see you. You just don't overthink it. Just anything, a machine that would use your form of energy. Do you want to explain that a little bit, Patrick?
Yeah, I just glanced at the list and my eyes landed on biomass, so that's what I chose. And I'm not familiar with a whole lot of them, but I think some power generating plants use biomass. So that was my power plant motion going on
Great.
there.
Do you know what kind of biomass you were leaning towards that you were? Crop waste or what were you?
Hmm. Yeah, well, let's go. I like crop waste. You can
Okay.
situate there. Biochar. I don't know.
Okay, cool. Great. Alicia, do you have one?
uh, kind of, yes, I'm, let's see.
Okay, fantastic. Tell us what you are and what machine you made.
I actually picked solar, and I have solar panels on my house. And so I was trying to think of like all the different machines we have in our house that run off of our solar power. So I picked a refrigerator. So that's why I was freezing.
Okay, great. Okay, good. And now I want each one of us who are showing ourselves. Does anybody else want to show themselves and participate as well? Are you good? Good. Okay, we're just demonstrating this. So of the three of us who shared our energy forms and the machines that did it, raise your hand if you are a renewable energy. Raise your hand up if you are renewable energy. Put your hand low if you are not a renewable energy. Okay, everybody go? Okay, we feel good about that? Great. Now I'd like you to open your fist like this if you are an energy that comes from the sun, and close your hand like this if you are an energy that does not come from the sun. Everybody go ahead. Okay, this is one where I've led this before. Oftentimes, if somebody were natural gas or coal or oil, they would fist their hands up. They think, I'm not from the sun, I'm not solar energy, I'm not the other. So it's really a fun opportunity to really dig into where does the initial energy come from that got stored up by these fossil fuels. Okay, and then I want you to give me a thumb, and I want you to give a thumbs up if you are an energy that is good for Boulder, thumbs down if you don't think you are an energy that's very good for Boulder. Mm. Okay, nice. Does anybody want to
Or
give,
wherever you're from.
okay, great. Does anybody want to give a explanation as to why they put themselves where they did in their assessment of if their energy is good for Boulder? And if you were in another place, you do it for your place. Patrick, why are you only, you're kind of wavering.
Well, there are better options than biomass for us, I would say. Not a whole lot of biomass to be had in our immediate vicinity. And those generators still produce different forms of waste that wind and solar would not. So I'd say leaning towards not good, but better than some.
Great. Alicia, why did you put yourself where you did?
Well, I mean, I think Colorado in general gets a lot of sun. And so I think that solar energy is great at, being able to power a lot of different electronics and things, houses especially. A lot of people out here have solar panels and yeah, so I think it's good for Boulder because it helps create more renewable energy so we're using less fossil fuel energy.
Cool. And I would say that for me, I'm just so aware of the excessive fracking in our region. So that was why I chose that mine was not so good for our area. We already have enough fracking. Great. So I'd like to go back to my play from current slide. So I'd like to go to use slideshow. Great. So I just want to share the directives that I have. I have it in green for how we did this on Zoom, but I have it in black for how you do it in an in-person classroom with kids. And what really happens is when they get into groups and make machines that use these forms of energy, they really have to be critically engaging with the energy form itself, how it's used, and actually physicalizing that with their bodies. Then when they stay in the groups and they go to one side or the other, if it's renewable or non-renewable, that's usually not such an easy question for middle school, high school to even answer. And some of them can get kind of clever and say, well, it's renewable if you've got a couple million years to millions of years to wait around, which teases out really great qualities about all these different energies that are so important to taking on climate change. And then this is where it gets really fun when you have people go to one side of the room or the other based on whether or not they're energy from the sun. And that's where it can get really fun. And then when you get to the point of are you an energy form that's good for where you live, where you're doing this work, you can get into really nuanced conversations. And what I find is that people can get intimidated about not maybe knowing enough about different energy forms, but by even just going to simple sites like the one I have listed at the bottom there, you can get yourself up to speed where you can talk pretty, with a fair amount of experience and authority about different energy forms and really have a meaningful conversation with young people. And it also, when the questions emerge that you don't have the answers to, finding those answers is a really fun group activity. This is a activity that I developed when I was working in the Navajo Nation with the Tuba City High School and working with Diné and Hopi students, and they had a really great time embodying these different energy forms and then relating them to their area, which was very impactful and very important to their lives, and they got it even as young people. Oop. A place that I want to just direct you to, if you want to do more embodied games that are just good warm-ups or good for building community or getting people to be expressive with their bodies, is the Community Performance Toolbox. Patrick was part of a course that years ago that helped develop this. It's really student-driven, and it shows videos of actions that shows videos of the games being played and has simple directions, but they're really easy grab and go kind of activities that you can implement in your classroom. And really using these kinds of things on a daily basis in whatever setting you're working in can really start to break down these inhibitions and create an expressive group of people that's way more willing to engage in these embodied methods. So one of the embodied methods that I've been developing over the years, and that's really the most finished in that it really has all the assets it needs to be implemented, is one that was for youth engagement with climate through performance and it's a performance that's entitled Shine. And there's a 2-minute trailer on the Inside the Greenhouse website that tells what Shine is about. And I kind of feel like maybe we should just, I don't know if this is live or not, if we should just watch it to, it kind of, let me see if this is live or not. I don't know if it is. It isn't live. I think the video, it's a really great thing to go to if you're wanting to use this, and it's right there on the Inside the Greenhouse website if you go to How to Act Up and then go to Shine. And if we have time at the end, I can show it. But it just shows that it's a mini musical that begins with Act 1. And Act 1 is professionally written, choreographed, composed, and it really leads young people through the story of how fossil fuels were formed. We have the sun over here, who's the lead, one of the lead characters, and she's shining down. We see the ancient plants and animals who are doing their dance of photosynthesis. So young people are actually embodying the process of photosynthesis. Then we see those plants and animals dying, getting covered by rock and sand and compressed. And then we see that pretty soon in that bottom corner, we see phos emerge from that. And that's fossil fuels, the little brother to the sun. So they're energy siblings. And this is really a story of these two siblings. The sun is more about sustainable living, working in harmony with the world, and phos wants to speed things up and, really fuels the Industrial Revolution and all the carbon that comes out. The story that gets told is kind of a funny, touching, moving story that has the music that really stirs the heart. And it ends with a scene in which the emissions caused by phos cause a storm that happens, and it rips through the fabric of community. And one of the people who has done the least to cause climate change from one of these sustainable communities is hurt. Phos is holding that person in their arms, and the last lines that he says are, "What now?" And then someone steps out and says, "This is where our current story has led us, to where we have, disrupted our climate. That is the story that has already been told. What is the story that we want to tell that really starts to enact the solutions to this crisis?" This is that moment that I was telling you about, where the sun is scolding phos, saying, "Whoa, what now?" And then Act 2. This is where young people have gotten together in groups in their, within the cast of who's doing the show, and they've created solutions that are actionable in their location. This was done as part of the Rockefeller Foundation 100 Resilient Cities Initiative. So it was toured to many different cities throughout that initiative: London, Durban, Boulder, New Orleans, New York. And each city has different challenges and different solutions that are appropriate for them. So the youth enact these solutions. So it's really a mechanism by which young people can be engaged in being the authors of climate and resilience solutions within their communities. And then, of course, you have to celebrate the whole thing with a final song, which is Shine, Shine, Shine. And that really helps to cement that feeling of community, all the feelings that have been experienced. It kind of gives a closing to it. And it usually leaves you humming that song. That's a good final song. You're humming it as you go. And it carries that message and that feeling of hope as you leave the performance and go back into your life. It was created by me through an initiative that I co-founded, Inside the Greenhouse, for creative climate communication at the University of Colorado, along with Max Boykoff, Phaedra Pizzulu, and Rebecca. Yeah, please. Someone raise their hand, please chime in. Is that Owen? I got a little notice that there's a hand up. Anybody, please jump in if you have a question. And the artistic collaborators, really gorgeous music created by Tom Wassinger. Arthur Frederick was a choreographer, had worked with the National Dance Institute in New York City. He was a Broadway performer in West Side Story with Jerome Robbins, really good at getting accessible, excellent movement for young people. Worked with scientific collaborators who really ensured that the science was really accurate and accessible, and got us into the National Center for Atmospheric Research, where we did our first showing of it. We did it for the scientists. A lot of this is about inverting these places of social power where we often have scientists presenting to young people to say, what happens when young people are presenting to the scientists? And what kind of, what do communities gain when they're hearing from the young people within their community? And this is part of something in theater we call applied performance. It's often non-performers, people who don't have that as their specialty. It's often in non-traditional spaces. And the process is just as important as any resulting product, an exhibit, or a performance. And it's based on social issues that are identified as important by the community. So when we go to do those resilience and climate solutions, the young people themselves and the teachers are all guiding that process of what's important to them. And the entire performance experience is designed to engage, to be getting people to be critically thinking. And what we notice is that youth performance can inspire a community with hope for climate solutions. It can, you can just kind of feel that there's a good feeling when you feel like young people are caring and being expressive. And some of the learning goals are understanding this relationship between energy and climate. They really embody it. One of my favorite moments was when there was this little kid in New Orleans who was an ancient plant. And they have those green suits on that you saw in the photos, and they get buried by that big, huge brown fabric, which represents the dirt and mud that covers it. And when they're underneath there, they're supposed to take off those green suits, and they're all directed to wear black underneath because they're going to become coal. And when the black comes out, they roll out as things of coal. And there was this great learning moment when the embodiment worked, when this one kid, I was holding the thing down so I could see the kids underneath as they're frantically ripping off their spandex. And the one kid says to the other kid, wait, you have to make sure that stays underneath. We're coal now. Like he understood, like we're being transformed by the weight of all this into a different energy form. So you've got to be careful. And that was just a great moment that they were critically engaging while they were doing. And he was so insistent and alive in that moment. And I credit the physicalization, the embodiment, with his kind of level of commitment to the science of it. So it's really understanding that relationship. And then placing Earth's production of fossil fuels and the impact of human use of fossil fuels into scale within the last 300 million years of geological history. And understanding how our energy use is impacting our climate, and then placing it all within the context of human history and human society. And this approach is really grounded in science, it's expressed through the arts, and it's focused on youth-authored solutions. The goal is to get to where the young people are creating their own solutions and embodying their solutions and sharing them. And it includes embodied learning, youth empowerment, civic engagement, and one of my favorite ones, which is students as authors of knowledge and partners in public display. I think a lot of confidence comes to young people when they are the partners in the public display. And then this is one of my favorite quotes. I have to move this so you can read it fully. But fun is a very silly word, but a highly productive state. And that is super important for this work because when people are having fun, they're paying attention, they're engaged, they're right there. And the Tour of Shine went to many different places around the country and a few places around the world. And there's two ways that you can use this in your classroom. You can go online to Inside the Greenhouse and go to Shine, and you can get all the things that you would need in order to costume it, you'd have the script, the music, choreography, the lesson plans, the properties, the costumes. But then that's one way to engage in it. But another way, and there's a book that's written about it that shares all the lessons from the tours. But another way that is really great is Patrick Chandler, as part of his dissertation, created a curriculum for 4th grade Colorado and beyond students. And this is a fantastic 12-session guide. It's really so well cared for. Patrick includes the management guide for using this, because when you invite students to be embodied and to be in their bodies, oftentimes they can, the classroom management guidelines, they can you know, it lets loose all heck because they're not used to it. So having this guide to really do this in a productive way that you can make sure you're ensuring consent and, you know, things like this when it gets physical, it's really important. And this work that Patrick did is open source. There are 12 15-minute lessons for 4th to 5th grade classrooms, and these can be really used in formal and informal settings. And it's really just, you know, highly colorful, ready, really a lot of care given to the creation of this. And what we realized when we were doing this and implementing this in the classroom was that kids were ready to do it, but that they didn't always have access to top climate solutions. They were doing these ingenious solutions to picking up pollution, which isn't really a climate solution, it's more aesthetic. So kids need access to top solutions. We've partnered with Project Drawdown to take the top climate solutions that they identify and to make them appropriate for young people, appropriate and appealing. So we're featuring young people in the illustrations for these. We took the language and made it much more accessible and engaging, but we really stayed true to the research that was done by the Project Drawdown team. We really feature a lot of, and it's not an accident, it was very intentional, a lot of the illustrations show young people using embodied methods to be communicating their climate solutions, their ideas. This is one, recycled toilet paper. It's a song that they did about a way to address deforestation. So this is all available on enactingclimate.org. All this open access. You can see there are creative activities for youth learning and climate action, and that's where you can find the curriculum, the guide for doing embodied methods with young people, and the solutions themselves that have been really beautifully designed and all that. So I also have that you know, the Shine example that I share is done. It's like ready, it's packaged, it's ready to use. There's some other things that I'm working on now that are still kind of in process that I just want to share with you to kind of bear testimony to the breadth and width that these kind of, in variety of ways that this performance-based creative work, embodied fun ways can take shape and how they can engage young people. So one of the main projects I'm working on right now, currently, I don't have it for kids, but I'm working on ways that it can be for kids right currently, is called the butterfly affect. And this invites people to metamorphize alongside a caterpillar of a given species and to consider change in their own lives as they learn from and travel with a butterfly through its incredible metamorphosis. This was doing the performance in University of Cork in Ireland. You can see it's a highly embodied process that involves costumes. I love costumes. I think costumes really help people get over inhibitions for embodiment, for movement. I think they're just fun. I think people love to dress up. And this involves taking pictures of them in costumes, which is fun. And yeah, they get to I love the textures, the materiality, the colors that come with this too. Another project that I'm working on currently is Bird's Eye View, and it falls within Side by Side. And we just recently received an ASIL NSF grant, the Advancing Informal STEM Learning grant. So we'll be working on this project for the next 5 years. And it's a team of a scientist, Becca Safran, in eBio, and Shaheen Radbari in environmental design, and myself are the primary investigators on this project that we've done 2 iterations on before we got the major funding from the National Science Foundation. But this is really to lead and guide people in having these interspecies extending friendship to birds local to Colorado as a way of finding your place in belonging and as a part of the natural world and as a part of STEM communities. We guide people. We have a website that has all the stuff that we do, but our thing that we really base this on is we aim to co-create an equitable, thrivable, survivable future for all life and the ecosystems upon which life depends. We do this by guiding young people in identifying a local bird with whom they feel a strong affinity and then researching that bird through observation. We noticed that both art and science begins with observation, and that we begin with that and we take science field notes, art field notes, and based on those, they created these costumes, these almost like wearable puppets of different bird species. We really do engage in exploring the science. We have an embodied activity that we do that leads us in contemplating the common ancestor from which we and birds evolved, and that we have many of the same bones, that they just have evolved to have a slightly different shape. But we have this guided meditation, like embodied activity, to really start to feel like, what does it feel like when we start to move our own arms as though they are still bird wings instead? And then the young people are guided. This was so fun because they'd be working, obviously they had to make all those feathers out of cardboard, out of corrugated cardboard, the shirt, all that they had to do it. Then they had to string the feathers together. And then once they took it up off the ground where it was just like a dead flat thing, and then put it on and started to move those wings, it just like came alive. It was really exciting. This is Grant Gonzalez, one of our folks who worked with us. We really centered on working with female identifying folks and gender diverse youth in embodiment around different bird species and their relationships with them, and as a way of knowing, and really getting the movements of the birds in your own body as another way of knowing. Also, we made films of the young people doing this, and we experimented with large scale puppetry as well, and just were really explorative, got folks into open space mountain parks to be experiencing this, speaking their own words about what it meant to them through a bird's eye view. What did they come to know? What did they come to understand? We created these two different films that live on our sidebyside.world website. They've been on film festivals around the world, over 20 film festivals. We have won awards. That was a really cool way to get it out. So that's my contact info. I want you to know that you can contact me, or if you know somebody who thinks, oh, I know somebody who would love this. I know a teacher who would adore this. I'm here for advice, encouragement, ideas. I have costumes in my basement. I can so just try me, contact me. I'm super excited to help people do this kind of work. And if they want to use any of these things that are available that I've created, I'm very happy to share that out. And just as a closing, before we kind of have more of an open conversation, my own personal feeling is the best, this is for me, the best place I can think to put my energy for creating an equitable, survivable, and thrivable world is into performance-based experiences for young people who care. So that's what I do. And if you want to help doing that, give me a call, look me up, find me. So with that, I end my PowerPoint and I just open it up. I'd love to hear from anybody else about experiences you may have had with some of these techniques or approaches or strategies, or any questions that you might have.
I put a couple questions from the Q&A in the chat there, Beth. First one from William Stowe asking, can you share what helps adults and children to engage with sustainability? I know you've shared some specific examples, but maybe some.
I think making that a local thing, like something that they care about, finding things that people already care about, and then finding the sustainability issues with that. I do a college class, creative climate communication, and we have a whole thing on fast fashion and sustainable fashion. And that's something they already care about. I don't have to talk them into caring about fashion. They already care what they look like. So tying it into things that people already care about, I think, that great open source, it comes from Eco America, Connecting on Climate. Such a good guide. It's a couple of years old now, but I still find that that's such a good guide for engagement, finding, engaging those people who are, thought leaders in your community, all these, they have just such a rich collection of advice for doing just that. But I think keeping it local, keeping it what people already care about. Don't try to talk them into caring about something. Just show them how what they already care about has sustainability implications and impacts that are going to impact them.
Great, thanks. And from Oswald, This is very productive. How can we, or how can the international community get more involved?
Well, I mean, I think that there are just so many people who are already doing this. You're from Zimbabwe. That's fantastic. Um, the Shine stuff is all open source, free. If anybody wants to use it, I did it in Malope in South Africa with kids there, and they had a ball doing it. And they really chose to focus on kind of reproductive health. And so we did a whole section on using the play, and then their skits were all about reproductive health. We ended up doing a song where it went, we made a thing about the female reproductive system. We had a song that went, ooh, ah, ah, ooh, ooh, ah, ovulation, ooh, ah, ah. So you can just get the idea that you can just like make a song out of anything. And it just makes it fun. We had 5th grade boys who were just like ready to do this, like enacting the female reproductive system. And they were ready to do it because it was performance-based methods. And yeah. So I'd be happy to talk with you, Osred, about some of these tools and if they're applicable, but finding other tools. There's so many great groups that are doing this kind of work. Okay, then great. Cheryl, I see, says, I love these ideas for performances. It's so important for kids to connect with nature so they can care about it and become good stewards. So much better than being on electronics all the time. Yeah, it's so funny because pre-COVID, Patrick and I were working on this Shine curriculum. And one of the things we were like, yeah, get them beyond computers. And then COVID hits and everything has to fit on a computer and on the Zoom sphere. So I think we can go back to saying it doesn't all have to be online anymore. And that can be wonderful tools. And that's not to discount those experiences. But, these performance things, we made the films, we did it all. Like most of us have some access to open space, mountain parks, any kind of open spaces where we can get our young people to really be having these relationships, even playgrounds. There are plants growing between the concrete cracks that can be fascinating. There are roly-polies making their way across the sidewalks. Any scale we can be engaging with. I just think of the times that we had, and I feel like the thing that arts and performance can do is they can speed up the feelings of deep connection that you can have in the natural world. We did an exercise when we were in open space mountain parks with the young people with the side-by-side project a few summers ago. And there's an exercise that you do, you establish a space, and we had this space in the forest floor. And it was right over, like, almost like if you can see where Patrick's background, it was like overlooking the Continental Divide. So we're on this kind of flattish area, but there's like a mountain and you're overlooking it. We're on Flagstaff Mountain. And we had with us Milo Luan, who plays the accordion. And we just loved having an accordion, but you can have a drum, whatever is a instrument that works for you, that you have accessibility to, a guitar, a whatever, kora, whatever it is. And Milo was on the accordion. I said, Milo, you just improvise on the accordion based on what you're experiencing in this natural space. For those of us who are here, we're going to do an exercise where we just either walk, stop, or melt. And you just melt however you would melt. And you just do it at your own timing, whenever you want to stop, start one or the other, walk, stop, or melt. And we're going to do this for 10 minutes. We did this for 10 minutes with about 13 young people, and Milo doing the accordion, just beautiful improvisation. And it was such a rich experience, shared experience of deep connection to where we were. And I think, and the young people responded that they agreed that the presence of the music really deepened our feeling of connection. It's like a zap to your feelings, your emotions. You feel more when you're listening to music. That's why we love music so much. We like to feel something. And it made us feel something stronger towards our environment as a part of it, as a part of nature. So I just can't emphasize enough how much expression and arts and those kind of things can help people feel connected. Even simple things like, we did one thing again when we did one of our retreats where we had a clearing that was kind of, there are logs and stuff and blah, blah. And we had all the young people get to make a big circle. So they're like, I don't know, like quite a ways out. And then we had one person in the center with a drum. And then we invited them to put on a blindfold and take away just sight, and then to find their way. And then the person in the center started doing the drum. And the young people had to make their way towards the person drumming using just their other senses: sound to guide them towards the center, touch to keep from just tripping all over logs. And they made their way slowly back, but they were feeling the textures, they were smelling, they were listening, they were hearing the drum, but other things as well. And just these kind of guided, embodied experiences can give people such a rich, deep relationship to the land and to the ground that they otherwise lack. We're a species that relies so heavily on vision to navigate and to make decisions and to assess something, that taking that away and experiencing the others in a heightened way can be really rich and really rewarding. Anybody else, any other questions or thoughts or experiences that you may have had that would kind of enrich this shared experience? I can just keep going too. The thing that I find too is, like, by giving young people access to performance, they can write the story. They've been handed a story that's just not fair, and giving them space to critique and talk about and complain about the story that they've been handed. There's a line in a musical, my next musical that I'm writing, and it's called, "Where's my future? Someone spent it long before I could resent it." There's like anger. They're mad at us. We like had the party. We had the fossil fuel party, and now we're inviting them to come clean it up. So giving people young people a place to critique the story they've been handed and to write the story that they want. I see young people coming up with the story of a counter story to fast fashion. They're saying, no, we're going to have parties at the Stand, which is a cafe on the corner of Arapahoe and Broadway. And we're going to have sewing machines there, and we're going to have a clothing swap, and we're going to have a band, and we're going to have really good plant-based food. And we're going to have a place where you can repair your wear and swap what you got and try it on. We'll have mirrors. We'll be oohing and eyeing over each other. You know, like all these things, like they're telling a new story and they're making it fun and aspirational along the way. So I think that giving young people the chance to tell and write the story can be highly productive. Beth, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the transition from resistance to engagement in embodied lessons and work. Glad to explain more if that helps. If you want to jump in and explain more, otherwise I could riff on what I think you're asking.
Yeah, I guess I just find that even in myself, there's a moment in these types of lessons where I step up and I'm like, okay, we're going to do this exercise. We're going to jump in. We're going to do this together. And there's a part of me that's going, no, this is silly. I don't want to do it. I don't want to engage. And I see that people around the room are feeling that. And there's a transitional moment. There's something that happens at some point. And I feel like it's hard to pin down, really put your finger on what is that space that people suddenly allow themselves to engage in and what creates it. And I was wondering if you could touch on that a little bit since you facilitated.
I mean, for sometimes there are as a one-off you're doing. Sometimes you're doing a one-off workshop. But most of the time we're meeting repeatedly with folks. And we can create a culture of embodied expression. With my creative climate communication class, I have students who are primarily environmental studies majors. They're not used to coming to a class and being embodied and expressive. So I start the tradition of I went out and I bought myself a disco ball, the ball that has all the lights, and I have an extension cord, and we have a tradition. I did the first song, I chose the first song. We turn off all the lights because low lights is really good for reducing inhibitions. We have music, really good for getting us to all move. Many of us dance already in some format anyway. And we just start class by doing a song and a disco dance. And we do it by, you don't even have to all make it up yourself. We have one person get in the center of the circle and they do a repeated move that everybody does until that person gets tagged out. And we'll start saying, okay, we've been doing this one for a while. Somebody tag them out. And then somebody will take them out. And then we're doing a different move. And then somebody else will take them out. And the low lights and the other things. So you just get, you just tap into things that are just universally kind of true. Low lights, it helps with expression. Music, it gets people moving. And you just start integrating that into a culture of expression. And also ask the facilitator, there are characteristics that a good facilitator of these kind of things needs to embody. You need to bring more energy to the room. Like your energy's this big, I'm this big in my energy, so you could show up this big and not feel like you're stretching the space. So I have to make the energy big. I have to support, I have to congratulate, I have to bring enthusiasm, I have to scaffold it so that I'm not asking somebody to do something too hard too soon. I have to give clear directions so that people understand what they're doing, and so they're not like, they don't want it tenuous. When I do an assignment that is creative based, I do a lot of weird assignments for my students. They are so well planned out. I have a rubric. I like informal situations, like they know where their points are coming from. They know how I'm going to, assess it, so that they're not worried. They're like, okay, I'll relax into this. Like if I show up and have demonstrable effort, I'll get full points. Okay. And the other thing is that we can project a lot on our students. This was actually an experience of a friend of mine that I feel like I can share. She taught a class like this. It was a business class for leadership, and she did a lot of embodied methods. And she was always thinking, do these students even like doing this? And so one time she didn't do her mindfulness kind of breathing exercise, and she started up with class. And one of the guys who she felt like presented as like a frat guy raised his hand and he goes, aren't we going to do the meditation? And she was like laughing because she was like, oh, I had like, she had skipped it because she felt like she was like pushing it on them. And he was like, dude, where's our meditation? So don't project. Like people kind of feel the need to do a little bit of resistance, but they mostly don't mind it. So providing places where it feels safe. Like I don't tell people we're going to put on the disco ball and you have to just dance. That's hard. Following somebody else doing a movement, that's not as hard. That's like you're not having to make it up. And then if you get a good feeling at the end, you can start saying, okay, freestyle till the end of the song, but only until it feels ready. You kind of scaffold it and you build in kind of safety, handlebars, training wheels, if you will. But I think also don't assume that people are going to be resistant and provide the culture where that's just an expected part of it.
Appreciate both of those points, and I want to give space to anybody else who has a question. If not,
experience to share.
Yeah, okay. I also want to jump in. I think you can do so in the Q&A, or if you're a panelist, you can do so directly. And I'll give a second. I have one more question to throw in, if for the sake of our present and recorded audience. Okay, I'm going to throw this one in, Beth. So once you've developed this engagement, do you actively work to catalyze the emotional processing around issues like climate change, or do you find that it happens naturally through the process, through the activities? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that when you reflect, like whenever, it's like you want to do praxis. So you want to be doing the practice, but then you always want to be reflecting on it. And I think that it's through the reflective piece that oftentimes when things come up, when you're reflecting on them as a group together, and that's where a lot of those feelings can come out. I think also just asking if you're in informal learning spaces, when you get to the end of a project and you're really asking people to reflect back on it and you co-create the questions. I like to do it where I come in with a starter, so we're not starting with nothing because that would take too much of our class time, but I'll start out with the questions that I think would be useful and satisfying and generative to reflect on, but then I always leave space for them to co-create the questions and where I've been left. And I had the students do a really deep written reflection to a climate comedy performance that I just led my students in doing, and that was really generative. And then after they've done that, then you can ask certain people who want to share, so they benefit from each other's shared experiences too. But there's also ways that you can get people reflecting and looking on it in different ways. Like there's a way where you can have a circle, everybody standing in a circle, and you can draw like one circle with either chalk or a rope or with masking tape, and Then you can make other concentric circles and you can number those spaces and you could say, okay, I'm going to state the objectives for this learning experience. If you feel like this is true for you, like that you met this learning experience, then move really towards the center. And if you don't feel like it was at all met, stay to the outside of the circle. And you can say that thing and then ask people to place themselves in a certain place. And then everybody's getting that feedback. So it's not extractive kind of knowledge you're taking out, but everybody can see how everybody else fared. And then you can ask for kind of qualitative feedback too. You can say, hey, Patrick, why did you stand where you did? Did you want to share out why you placed yourself where you did? And then people can speak to that. So there's a lot of different mechanisms that we can use to help people start sharing. Because once you get it spatially, people kind of have to commit. Like, I can't stay neutral. To stay on the outside of the circle is to be saying something. So you have to kind of like physical commitment. And I just kind of love that for environmental stuff. It's like, it's such a physical thing. It doesn't exist in the intellect. It's something that we experience and impact physically. So for us to address it physically just feels like a good match.
Really appreciate that. And Alicia, is there anything you want to add or ask at the end?
I don't think so. I've been taking notes. Thanks a lot for coming and joining us today. This has been really interesting and fun.
Great. Glad. And if anybody knows of any teachers in formal or informal spaces that might enjoy or use the Shine, I'd love to talk with them. I think Osred, do you have your hand raised?
Yeah, and I've unmuted you if you'd like to just jump in, Oscar.
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, so I wanted to ask regarding the engagement of these young ones. How are you preparing, or how are you engaging in terms of those who have disabilities? Because there should be a certain strategy that can be used in terms of engaging those ones which have certain disabilities. So in terms of that, is there any strategy yet on dealing on that issue?
That's great. So like there's so many different things that we can say on this, but there's so many different ways that like even in our language, I used to call a certain exercise step up and step back, which is an exercise to say, hey, if you've been doing it a lot, maybe step back, but if you've been quiet, maybe step up. And instead it's like take space, make space, getting our language to be less ableist. So I'm not like assuming everybody can step. Some people may use a mobility device and maybe can't step or move like that. So I think that usually if in classroom settings, we often know what kind of abilities folks have and if people need, different things in terms of range of motion or ability to stand or ability to move, that those kind of things can be addressed. But there's also things like when Patrick and I were doing this project in a school, we had a child who had sensory integration issues. And one of our things that we did, we brought them to a class. A Ghanaian friend of mine, co-teacher Nyama Soa, did an African dance song class. And when the students all came, we wanted them to be involved. And most of the students loved it. But there was one young fellow for whom it was completely overwhelming with all the drummers. So we, somebody took him out in the hallway, but then he wasn't even up for performing. But boy, was he excited to be doing the sound equipment with Patrick when we did the final performance for the all school showing, the plenary showing. So finding roles for kids who have maybe sensory issues that's still contributing. They can even be doing a shaker or they can be doing a musical thing or whatever, but giving them an essential role and planning ahead so that they have an essential role in this that might even pull the experience out into a different and more expansive space for everybody. But I'd be happy to problem solve with you. Usually with creativity and preparation ahead of time, you can provide essential roles for kids that might not be able to do some of the things that are addressed. But there's so many different ways. Like you can be doing, there's arm choreography. There's so many different ways that people can be doing movement and engagement and art making and experiencing it. So yeah, I'd be happy to talk with you if you have situations or kids with certain abilities that you're really specifically trying to address.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth. And I see we're a couple minutes over time, and I want to respect that. That was a great question to end on.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you for your time,
And
Beth.
thanks everybody for coming. Do not hesitate to reach out.
You want to throw your email in the chat one more time, Beth, for anybody who's looking for it?
Bet.
I have a question for you, Beth, once we stop recording.
You bet. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
Go ahead and stop.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you.